What's up, Go community? Scott here with the Gaming Outsider, and I sure hope you're ready to hear about some games. Now that R2V2 is under our belt, we're back to the Grindstone reviewing a ton of games, including Remnant from the Ashes, Freedom Finger, Grindstone on Apple Arcade, Greedfall, Fight and Rage, Legend of the Skyfish, Mario Kart Tour, the definitive edition of Telltale's The Walking Dead, the latest DLC for Mutant Year Zero called Seed of Evil, and a point-and-click adventure called Whispers of a Machine. Wow, that's quite a list of games. We also discuss what it means when we call a game a classic and which titles deserve that recognition. Thanks for stopping by this week and enjoy the show. This is the Gaming Outsider. Greetings, programs, and welcome to episode 264 of The Gaming Outsider, a video game podcast with a focus on our incredible community. It's Monday, September 30th. I'm your host, Scott Clark, and I'm joined, as always, by my fellow co-hosts. First off, a guy who poked the bear and now has elicited a request for a Glee episode on Patreon, Mr. Zack Parkerson.
Yeah, can't wait to have you on there, Scott.
Are we really going to have to do that? That's 2 or 3 people now that have requested a Glee episode. What does that mean? Does that mean we have to sing, or are we just going to review like a season of Glee?
I think we just need to talk about the first season of Glee.
Okay, that's all we got to do. Then I'm okay with that.
Don't stop, believe. Yeah.
Don't go too far; we'll get sued.
Yeah,
anyway,
so
also
spot-on impression.
Yeah, exactly. Also joining us, a guy who is already booking us to be guests at other events, Mr. Chris Baronsmeyer.
Hey, man. What can I say? It's things.
I got a text from CB the other day. He's like, "Hey, oh, we got this youth expo we're going to go set up a booth at," and I'm like, wait, what? we just got done, man. Give me a break. I need a break.
Yeah. I mean, well, it looks like it's going to be a fun event, and it's a charity thing, man. So, you know me. I'm always for that. By the way, going back to your Glee episode.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry. I've got things planned.
What does that mean?
There were Glee games.
Oh, you're right.
That's wonderful. Hey, look, it all works, Scott.
Were they like microphone-based games? Like
Yes, they were.
Oh, man. So there's going to be streaming involved as well, is what you're saying.
Of you singing.
No.
Yes.
You're a DJ. Does that make you halfway to a musician already?
Yeah. Just like being really good at Guitar Hero makes you halfway to being a real guitar player. Absolutely not. I think that sounds fun. I think we should do that for October for sure. Do a Glee episode.
Well, we already have things planned for October, but don't worry. There's plenty of time left in the year.
All right. And speaking of charity, by the way, kudos to everybody who donated to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Amanda's walk this weekend at Rock Valley College took place. It was an awesome success. Got to meet a lot of people. Thanks to Brandon Smith and the EXP cast for donating. And we also got another donation at the last minute by someone that I just got a screen name, and I don't know who it was. So whoever you are, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. It was cool, by the way, guys. Since we sponsored the event, the T-shirts actually had the Gaming Outsider logo on the back of them, which is kind of cool. Walking around it was like 4 laps around the college or whatever, and I'm following behind people and seeing the Gaming Outsider on all these shirts, which is kind of awesome to see. So thank you to everybody. I still don't know where we rank against the Hollywood Outsider, but I'm going to have to follow up with Aaron and Amanda and see how we did. But the charity overall was awesome. I think before the merchandise, they had raised over $24,000 for the foundation. So awesome event. So kudos to Amanda and all the work she put into that. But we're going to go ahead and jump now into the week's news. All right, I thought this was kind of interesting. Someone is making a Mario game based on the animated TV series. If you guys don't remember this show, it wasn't even all animated. The TV show was like real actors that were acting as Mario and Luigi, and then it led into like this cartoon series that was in the back end of the episodes. It was called the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. The game is being animated and created by a fan by the name of Jesus Lopez. If his name sounds familiar, it's because he worked on games like The Simpsons Tapped Out, DuckTales Remastered, and Shantae Half Genie Hero. All are very recognizable titles. But he is making this on his own with actually his 2 young children who are helping with the art and programming as well. I thought this was a really cool thing, and if you watch the video, It's a game that I want to play, guys. Am I alone?
No, you're not alone at all. I actually think this looks great. There was just the animation looks so good, and the fact that they are trying to tie it back to the Super Show
Mm-hmm.
in a way. The DuckTales remaster was great. Shantae Half Genie, also a great game.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's got chops, and if it actually comes to fruition, I'm in.
Yeah, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, it looks cute. I have fond memories of that show, so why not? I mean, it's nice that he's making it with his kids. That's adorable.
Yeah, it makes it really sweet. I don't know how much you guys watch this show. I didn't watch that nearly as much as like Captain N or even the Zelda one, but there was an episode where you can tell those two actors totally were just hated the fact that they were doing this. If you get a chance, go on YouTube and find a video of Super Mario Brothers. Just type in the words F you Luigi. Because the character of Mario actually says that in an episode. It's hidden very subtly, but he pulls off a piece of spaghetti off of Luigi and says that phrase, and it's hilarious, and it's actually even on the DVDs. It was never edited out, and I think that's hilarious that nobody caught that. So,
I just remember watching the Christmas episode over and over again because we had it on VHS.
you had just the Christmas episode on VHS?
Like Bowser was stealing presents or something.
Oh, Bowser, as always. I don't know. I think the art style looks really cool because it's two-dimensional platforming, but it's a game where as you go through the level, it's kind of like it's almost like 1.5D or 2.5D, where like it's not just flat against it. So you're seeing the front of the question blocks, and then behind the question blocks when you walk past them. I don't know. I just think it looks really cool and something I'd be interested in checking out. How long before Nintendo shuts it down, do you think?
That was my concern. That's going to be a bad look for him, taking away a bonding experience between a man and his children.
That's a good point.
Or maybe Nintendo's like, hey, we like this so much, why don't we actually pay you to do it?
When's the last time they did that?
Oh, probably never, but
well, I mean,
there's always hope, man. There's hope.
Cadence of Hyrule, kinda.
Yeah, I guess they did lend out Link to another developer, but
the developer went to them and was like asking to make Zelda DLC for Necrodancer, and they were just like, well, how about you just make us a game?
Fair enough, but that is also somebody coming to them first before they do anything.
Before they have illegally built their own game?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. I remember when like the Metroid 2 remake thing happened where somebody remade Metroid 2 but in the style of Super Metroid. And we're like, that would be a freaking great idea. Why don't you talk to Nintendo and do that? Nintendo shut it down because, unbeknownst to us at the time, they were in the process of developing the Return of Samus or Samus Returns on 3DS. So I have a hard time believing that Nintendo is cooking up a Super Mario Brothers Super Show video game right now. So it'd be a pretty safe bet to get to talk to them now sooner than later. But that'd be a quirky little title to have on Switch. I would totally buy that, especially because his kids are helping him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's awesome.
Put it out there for like $15 or whatever.
Yeah.
Be cool.
It would be very cool. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next story. Zach, I'm going to let you take this one because it is breaking news. No joke. About, half an hour before we started recording, this news dropped. Take it away, man.
Right, yeah. So I got Sean Layden, president of Sony Worldwide Studios, has departed PlayStation. What's crazy, because he is a press conference staple.
Mm-hmm.
He's been with the company since 1987. But PlayStation announced on Twitter, it is with great emotion that we announce that Worldwide Studios chairman Sean Layden will be departing SIE. His visionary leadership will be greatly missed. We wish him success in future endeavors and are deeply grateful for his years of service. Thanks for everything, Sean. Sean Layden himself has made no comment on it, and his Twitter and LinkedIn has yet to make a mention of it.
That's interesting. Does that make you think that it was on bad terms?
This
tweet seems like it's pretty good.
I mean, the tweet seems fine, but the fact that Sean Layden's not talking about it, and that's a pretty major position to not have a successor lined up for or anything.
Right.
Or, some kind of game plan, or like, hey, we're going to leave. He's going to be leaving in, 2 months. Like, we knew Reggie Fils-Aimé was leaving long ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it does reek a little bit of what's going on over there.
Well, I think with Reggie, his was more of a retirement kind of situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sean Layden probably was cooking something else and had another opportunity elsewhere, and obviously couldn't talk about it because you don't talk to your employer about another employer courting you for another position, else they just show you the door.
Oh, is that what you think happened?
I would assume so. I can't imagine. He seems pretty young to retire, although who knows?
That's maybe something bad happened behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. CB, what do you think?
So yeah, it does seem very odd that all of a sudden Sean's like, oh, yep, I don't work here anymore. And this close to a new console generation coming out.
That's a good point.
So I'm wondering if somebody isn't switching sides to another company. So,
you think he's going like to Microsoft?
Microsoft. Well, keep in mind we have Microsoft right now, Nintendo. There's other burgeoning companies, Google Stadia. So I have a feeling he was poached.
That's a hell of a poach.
Yeah.
It is, but at the same time, money talks. So, and with companies like Microsoft just throwing the amount of cash around that they are to pick up both new studios and personnel, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody made an appearance somewhere else.
That's going to make for an interesting next few weeks to see where he's going to land.
Yeah, like I said, you can't have somebody like him just fall off the face of the earth and not wind up somewhere, especially with the talent pool the talent that he's come with. So I'm willing to bet he's not done in the video game industry.
I hope so. I hope not, because he's a genuinely cool dude, and he's one of the suits that gets it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, he seems all right.
Yeah. Can you imagine the team up between him and Phil Spencer?
Oh my God! Don't speak slower. All right. Well, October's games with gold, speaking of Microsoft, have been announced. We've got quite a list here. On Xbox One, we've got Timbo the Badass Elephant. I love that title. That's going to be on October 1st through the 31st. Also, Friday the 13th, the game is going to be on October 16th through the 31st, I believe, if I'm getting that date right. My computer's goofing up here. Also, on 360, we've got Disney's Bolt, October 1st through the 15th, and then Ninja Gaiden 3 on October 16th through the 31st. Any of these trip your trigger, guys?
Well, I mean, for me, I haven't bought Tembo. I was actually looking at it at one point in time, so the fact that I'm going to get it for free is pretty nice. I'm more excited by the fact that there could be a growing player base for the Friday the 13th game.
Have they fixed that yet?
Yeah, I still play it on occasion. I enjoy that game. It's fun. It's got its glitches, but it's enjoyable, especially if you're playing with people that you know. Bolt to me seems kind of a throwaway.
Easy achievement points, man.
It is, but most of the Disney games are. But Ninja Gaiden 3, I mean, it's not terrible.
I would have preferred 2.
I would agree, but at the same time, it's a free game. I'm not going to complain.
I want to know how does Bolt even come up in the rotation talks? You know?
Yeah.
Let's take this 14-year-old CG animated movie tie-in. People want that, right?
My guess is the licensing was cheap at the time. They could be like, hey, look, we can give this away, and nobody's buying it.
Disney only wants penny a copy.
I have a feeling that's how some of these games come up. It's like, oh, well, this game's not selling right now, so let's just throw it in the mix, and that way we can get some people to be like, oh, look, it's enjoyable. They start talking about it again, and then maybe you'll get 1,000 people worldwide to buy the game again. Because somebody else was talking about it.
If anybody has bought the digital copy of Bolt in the past 5 years, I would be surprised.
I would be too, but
yeah,
people may have forgotten that it was actually a game.
Yeah, you're right. So, well, yeah, never say never, I guess.
But do you think this could be a signaling of a sequel to Bolt coming to theaters sometime in the next year?
No.
I mean, why else?
Flat no. I have no idea why. It must have just been They ran an algorithm and they're like, well, this will be really cheap. We haven't put out a game with the letter B in a while.
Well, I think it's more or less like, oh, well, we need to put out a family-friendly title because you have Tembo, the badass elephant.
Right.
Friday the 13th, clearly a slasher game, and Ninja Gaiden 3. So, like, let's throw a random family game in there. So,
just to round it out.
Isn't Tembo a Game Freak game?
I don't know, but I do know this is the second time we've gotten this on Games with Gold.
Tembo?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, because I already have it that I've gotten on Games with Gold and I've never played it. So.
I missed it the first time around, so.
That's interesting because PlayStation's free game has Last of Us for the second time, too.
Yeah,
I guess we've reached that point.
Where they just run out of games to give away.
They're just cycling through stuff, yeah.
You know what's funny is we sit here and complain about like lackluster games that they're giving away. I can't tell you the last time I've played a Games with Gold game or a PlayStation Plus game. They're free, and it's more or less adding them to my library just in case I want to play them sometime in the future.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I can't fault Microsoft because, I mean, let's see. We got Sea of Thieves, which has been around for a while, but last month we had Blair Witch and Gears 5 for free.
Well, but those are also on Game Pass.
Yeah, but those are, one of them's a AAA title, the other one's a little indie game, but the fact that they were available day one, well, I mean, these games aren't even free because you have to pay for Games with Gold.
Right. You got to pay for the online service.
Their incentive.
Xbox Live. Yeah.
So I mean, the fact that those of us that bought the combined stuff, where it's like, oh, I get Games with Gold and Xbox Live. I mean, I got some good games last month for basically free. I'm not going to complain.
Games with Gold just adds to my backlog, my never-ending backlog of games. I'll get to someday, but probably never will. I mean, even with the release of the trailer for Last of Us 2 last week, I was really thinking, man, I would love to go back and just replay through Last of Us again. I've got it. I own the PS4 version. Never played through it a second time. It's a great game. I would love to play through it again before Last of Us 2 comes out. I'm never going to do that, guys. You know that just as well as I do. It's just not going to happen. And I always say, my next break I get from school, I'm just going to plow through this game. And then R2V2 happened, or something always happens, and I got to play the newest hotness. And it never happens. I'm still sitting on Persona 5 that I played for 3 hours and really liked. Was really digging that game, wanted to get into it. I don't have the time to play all these games. I need a break.
So you just need to not get married.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
It's not even my wife, man. I have, the Switch has been my friend lately because, we can sit and watch TV and I can play that and get stuff done, but cannot get Control done.
Man,
on the
what
couch.
is wrong with you?
Yeah, clock's ticking, Scott Clark.
That is next on my agenda, man, and I am dangerously close on finishing Link's Awakening, so Control, I'm going to have to start it over because I don't even remember how to play the game now, but yeah, I'll be finishing that one up. Anyway, we're getting off topic here. Let's go ahead and move on. Chris, besides the inevitable Glee episode, what else is happening on Patreon?
Well, we have just released our educational games episode with you, myself, and Nate. And then we did a behind the podcast episode with Nate, myself, and Bob. So I actually had a lot of fun with the behind the podcast episode. I know Nate and Bob did as well. So
yeah, it was a very just like free flowing conversation. There was some game talk, but most of it was like, hey, what do you guys do or what are you into when you're not reviewing games and hosting video game conventions? It was just a very fun conversation. So highly recommend it.
With some bizarre questions mixed in.
Oh yeah.
I gotta listen to this one.
It was a lot of fun. So we are going to be doing a Final Fantasy episode very soon with a special twist. I know Bob and I were talking about it earlier today. This upcoming month is October, and what better thing to be doing than horror games? So I know I have some special turds for Scott to play.
Well, it'd be pretty horrific to hear us sing, so we could count that as a horror game too. Us playing Glee games, right?
Oh yeah, we'll get to that. Don't worry. I have to track down a new microphone because I think the last time I played Rock Band, that may have gotten broken.
Oh, really? I have
Oh, yeah.
access to a microphone. I gave my Rock Band kit away to a buddy of mine, but he will let me borrow the microphone if we need to. So,
Oh, yes. It will need to be done.
but we need to. You know what we need to do for October? Since you got the keyboard, we need to do Typing of the Dead on Dreamcast.
I know. I just need to get my hands on the disc.
We'll make that happen. I will make that happen, man, because that is perfect for Halloween. It's a horror game, and I've wanted to play Typing of the Dead for as long as I can remember. And you have the keyboard. Let's do it.
I have a keyboard and I have a Dreamcast, so
All we need is the game.
Yep.
All right, well, if any of those episodes sound interesting to you and you'd like to take part in them, you can head over to patreon.com/thegocast. If you donate $3 a month to the cause to help pay for this show, you get access to all of that content as well as all of our past content. And there's quite a bit there for you to sift through, and I think you might enjoy it. So again, patreon.com/thegocast, and we appreciate everybody that's donated at this point. We really do appreciate the support. With that, we're going to go ahead and jump into our From the Outside In topic. This week, I thought it'd be fun to talk about the term classic when it comes to video games and what it takes to get that title in our eyes. We're going to also chat about what games we and our listeners think deserve to be called classics. So let's start with a definition before we get into the specific games. What do you guys think it means for a game to be considered a classic?
You know, I think La Llama Waffle summed it up pretty well. They said, I haven't played a ton of big games from the past year, and it seems like the ones I think look like classics already been mentioned. A classic to me is something that doesn't get forgotten as time passes, whether it's because of love or less admirable reasons. And I think the biggest takeaway from there is the people decide what's a classic, and it's those games that just don't get forgotten no matter how much time passes.
That's an interesting take. CB, do you agree?
I mean, well, for me, classics are games that either elicit an emotional response to a wide variety of people, whether good or bad. But they can also be remembered for either like their stellar gameplay, their mechanics, or just the story. But they provide or they could even provide like that niche market for just endless gameplay, something that you can't put down for a really long time, or something that you're going to constantly be coming back to. I mean, for me, score grabs are kind of like my classic games. Like those where I always go back to, things that I love because they don't end. There's just something that I can always go back to, pick up and just play or enjoy. So for me, that's kind of that classic game. Like Lamer Waffle and Zack have both said, it's something that people kind of decide what they are as well. So,
well, my definition kind of overlaps with yours a bit, CB. To me, a game is a classic if it does something to change the industry in some fashion. Some game that did something that we've never seen before, or kind of revolutionized gaming in general. That's the second half that doesn't overlap with what you said. But I think that in order for it to be a classic, it also needs to withstand the test of time. Something that actually can still be playable and still be enjoyable, even with current users that are in the current generation. And I was really happy with that definition of a classic until I read Amber Olmsted's comment that she said on Discord. She said, there is no real definition of classic. I feel that there is a point in our lives as adults where we look back a lot and reminisce. You don't hear children labeling games as classic unless their parents have labeled them as such. Then she goes on to list some of her games that are classics, and I thought that was kind of interesting. Do you guys think that nostalgia plays into us calling a game a classic, and are we passing that on to the younger generation and they're just kind of parroting what we say?
I actually, for one topic in the world, do not think nostalgia is the key. I think because when I view a classic and you view these classics like, let's take a recent one, right? I think most people would agree that The Last of Us is a classic. But we're not nostalgic for that game yet. It's just the consensus of the critical and fan playing minds. Like we all just kind of realize like, oh, that was a moment in gaming that we will always remember. Like that is an instant classic. So I don't think it is nostalgia. I think it is a response
Impact.
to it. Yeah, an impact, which is why when you said that part of your definition is that they revolutionize the industry, when you first said that, I kind of scoffed because I'm like, oh, you don't have to. But then I think about every classic game, I'm like, oh, yeah, there's a reason Ocarina of Time is a classic and Darksiders is not. It's hard to be derivative and be a classic, even if you can be great while being derivative.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I mean, I can kind of piggyback on that a little bit because there are such thing as retro classics, where that's kind of the games that I grew up on. My son will probably look at them as like, yes, like my dad labeled these as classics, but they are also retro games. And I do like your definition where they are something that has changed the industry. However, I like to go by the fact that there are those classics that are both good and bad, because there are certain things that have changed the industry for the better and some that have changed for the worse. 20 years from now, nobody is going to remember like Skylanders because they did the Toys for Life thing. That's going to be something that's forgotten.
Yeah, there's going to be kids that are going to grow up to be adults and be like, remember when Skylanders was a thing? I was obsessed with Skylanders, and yeah,
And
it was hot for like a minute.
No one will remember Disney Infinity.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
Well, I still remember things like Pogs.
Oh
So-
man.
That means nothing
Yeah.
to me.
Oh,
Yeah.
Pogs were like milk caps, basically, weren't they? Like,
But, once again, something that means nothing to Zach. He probably doesn't know what a milk cap is.
I know what a milk cap is. I've drank
So-
milk.
No, not like cardboard milk caps.
yeah, these weren't the plastic like
Oh,
ones that you screw on top. It's like, imagine the thing that's inside of the plastic cap.
yeah, okay.
Those were collectible. Like you had
Yeah.
a slammer. It was a game where you would stack these on top of each other, kind of like this is way back even before my time. Jacks, where
Yep.
you would play a game of jacks with somebody, and the winner would get to take the other person's marble. This is like if you slam your pog down on top of another stack of pogs, and if they fell outside of the circle or something, you won their slammer or whatever.
Now, see, there's a good point though. Like my parents would be like, "Oh man, like that was a classic game. Like we used to play jacks because they didn't have video games when they were growing up. So for
Mhm.
them, that is a classic game for them. I don't look at it as a classic. I understand that my parents talked about it as a classic.
Yeah, and I think that's what Amber is speaking of.
Yeah. So it is very true. But for each generation, you are going to have your classics. Like right now, my classics are considered retro classics.
Right.
So
That is an interesting take on it. I'm kind of torn because I really like my definition, but Amber makes some good points. I think what may be considered a classic to somebody may be trash, and vice versa. It's all about perspective and what games you yourself consider a classics. I mean, even talking to Nate, our producer, about games that he collects, he, unlike me, I try to collect every NES cartridge, or I try to collect everything Zelda. Nate, if you look at his collection, he only collects games that are important to him, that he has some nostalgia value to, or sentimental value to him. Those are classics to him, but again, that's bringing up the whole nostalgia aspect. For him, nostalgia may make a game a classic.
yeah, I mean, I don't consider my collection a classic collection. It's a retro collection that there are classics in there that either me or like friends consider those classics. So
Right. Interesting. Well, I want to hear some examples of games that you would consider to be classics then. Let's just jump right into it.
oh well, for me, my classics are things like Super Mario, Pac-Man, Asteroids. But moving a little further in time, but before the current generation, things like Morrowind, Resident Evil, Doom, Wolfenstein 3D, Donkey Kong Country, Sonic the Hedgehog. To me, those are like my classics from growing up.
I don't know if I heard any score grab games in that list, did I?
Asteroids,
Okay,
Pac-Man.
Asteroids, Pac-Man. okay.
Sonic.
Yeah, Sonic kind of
Well,
is, but there's a little
You
story.
scored based on your speed and your
Yeah.
collecting of the. I'm just.
I
Maybe,
mean,
maybe I played Sonic like that. I guess I don't know.
for me, like my number one will always be Galaga, but I put that in a different category.
Zach, what about you?
Yeah, you consider Galaga is your favorite game, right? But you don't consider it a classic?
Because it kind of transcends classic for me. Like that's my like pinnacle, my ideal game.
Right. Games don't get better than Galaga.
It's my number one for a reason, man.
I understand. I was just see for me, like, yeah, when I think about the classic games, I don't really put a lot of my personal weight behind it. I just kind of look at the games that mattered the most. Like when I think of classic video games, the very first thing that comes to mind is Ocarina of Time.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've said it before, I think that's the most important video game that's ever been made. So to me, that's like that is a classic. That's Stone Cold classic. Final Fantasy VII, another game that I don't even really like Final Fantasy VII. Although that remake looks pretty hot, but that is a game that is without question considered a classic. Resident Evil 2, I think, is definitely a classic that comes to mind. Super Metroid.
I think it's interesting that you say Resident Evil 2 and not Resident Evil 1.
I was actually going to ask the same thing.
That's so fascinating. That I don't know if it's because of my age or not, but when I think Resident Evil 2, or I think Resident Evil started things, or I think Resident Evil 2 kind of perfected things, and at least amongst everyone I know, like that's the one that is talked about.
Oh, you're not wrong. I think Resident Evil 2 is a far superior game, but I think, like you said, the original set the groundwork, and the controls aren't that much better in Resident Evil 2.
No, but I mean, if you think about, I'm not going to remember the first Dead Space as a masterpiece, and I'm going to remember Dead Space 2 as a masterpiece.
That's a good point.
Right.
So,
or if you take a more obvious example of Uncharted 2. Because most people almost disregard the first Uncharted.
That's a good point. And I think we're blurring the lines of the definition again then. Is it considered a classic? Where does quality fall into that? If you've got a series of games, is the best one the one that's considered a classic and the others are not?
I think when you perfect the idea, you can revolutionize. Or like Uncharted had ideas, but Uncharted 2 perfecting those ideas is what made it so revolutionary and a Game of the Year contender.
Okay.
That's just...
Yeah, because I don't think the original would have been a contender back on PS3. It was a good game, but I think I was more blown away by the cutscenes.
Yeah.
And the gunplay was fun, but I wouldn't have put it up there as a high pinnacle until I played 2. And 2 was like, wow, this is what games can be.
Right. That's sort of my 2 cents.
Okay.
Another classic, and I don't know if you guys are disagree, I would say Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. But
that one.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I think that was people still remember that rewind mechanic for one thing. And 2, it put Ubisoft on the map.
Oh, that's a good point too. Wait, that's not how it went.
Yeah.
I love that. For me, on my list, I've got, Pac-Man, Super Mario Brothers, Donkey Kong, and I'm surprised nobody else had this, Tetris. I know there's no story. It's very much a score grab game, but Tetris is, to me, like the epitome of classics because it revolutionized puzzle games. It is a game that everybody instantly recognizes, even if they're not gamers. They've played some sort of iteration of Tetris either on their phone or on Facebook, or they see those shapes and they think Tetris. I think the recognizability of that makes that game an instant classic for me. I mentioned Donkey Kong. I mean, that spawned a whole movie based on the score grab for that. So I think it's interesting that we didn't have a ton of overlap in our lists. I tried to keep mine a little bit short, but there wasn't a whole lot of duplicates there, which is interesting and goes back to being, classics are what you make them to be, and it's a very personal thing.
Well, I mean, I think there's also a little bit of an age difference there too, because both you and I said Super Mario Brothers and Pac-Man.
Mm-hmm.
I just went a slightly different route with my score grabs, whereas I said Asteroids because for me that's a little bit older and it had that Vectrex style to it.
True.
Whereas you said like Tetris. I completely agree. Tetris is a classic. For me, it's one of those games where it's been, I guess that kind of skipped my mind because it's been beat to death with so many reiterations of it.
Talk about Tetris?
Yeah, but we're still playing it. Tetris Effect just came out on PSVR, and I had a blast with it.
Well, I'm not saying that we're not still having fun with it. It for some reason my brain just kind of glossed over it because it is still in recent memory.
Yeah, see, my brain glossed over it because it is omnipresent. There is never a year that goes by where you do not think about Tetris.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think when I was talking about like Galaga earlier, Tetris to me is one of those games that transcends classic. It's kind of like a pinnacle staple almost in gaming.
Can you explain why that is? I'm curious because I know you love that game and it's your favorite, but what makes that game stand out above and have like a higher title than even classic? I'm really curious.
It's just something I can't put my finger on. But when I think of classics, I think of certain things, and I guess it's kind of in the eye of the beholder.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, like I absolutely adore this game. I think it's great, and I have nothing but good things to say about it. But for someone else, they may be like, I really didn't care for that game. So
it's personal preference. It's like what we're saying. One man's classic is another man's trash.
Yeah, and I think it's just more of an emotional thing for me because I have so many memories of playing that game on, like, growing up in my childhood with my father. Like, Saturday mornings, spent like 2 hours on Galaga every Saturday morning. So for me, it's something that I've, in my life, I've put on a pedestal. And that's just where I like to keep it.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that's games that we consider classics from yesteryear, but what about modern games? This is kind of what the whole Facebook post and Twitter post and Discord post was all about. Are there any titles that have been released this generation that you consider to be deserving of the title classic?
Well, I may as well get this out of the way. Tori said, to me, it needs to be replayable. For me, it was Spider-Man. I loved it way more than I thought. It made me cry. Not sure there's another game that did that. Platinum the game and beat the DLC. I actually want to try and get all the points on some side missions.
I think Aaron Peterson also mentioned Spider-Man as well. He said it was the only game that he remembers from this generation that he could not wait to get back home and play more. It was always constantly on his mind until he finally beat it. So, yeah, I would consider Spider-Man a modern classic for sure.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, some members of the Gaming Outsider would say it's the greatest game ever made.
Some would.
The smartest ones.
Ooh, shots fired.
I mean, it's no Galaga.
Well, it's not. I mean, Galaga's pretty recent, obviously. But I guess I'll just jump into the next comment here. This is the second half of Lamer Waffles. My vote is The Quiet Man. That game is going to hang around as a hot trash classic for years. The modern day equivalent of that Jaws game. If we can mention actually good games from a little over a year, Witcher 3 is my pick. I adore that game. I have 100 plus hours into it, and the fact it had choices in different paths makes the idea of replaying it super appealing as someone who rarely replayed things, other than Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. The game is so fast and wonderful and so easy to replay. Smart person. Yeah, Witcher 3 seems like that'll go down in history.
I would agree with you.
And that's an example of the first two games are not going to ever matter as much as the third game.
Yeah?
Yeah, I could agree with that.
That's very, very true. Man, I love Witcher 3, but I also hate it at the same time, because very rarely do I play a game where I don't just feel a drive to just get to the end as much as possible. And it was weird playing Witcher 3. I had I didn't feel rushed to play that game. I just sat and enjoyed it, which says something for me, a guy that's trying to get through as many games as possible and get to the next one and start the new one. I just wanted to be in that world. Granted, I didn't finish it, partially because I spent tens and tens of hours before I left the first island and then saw how big the game actually was, and I went, no way. I just was overwhelmed and just kind of turned it off after that. But I just love being in that world. And
I really wish that game did it for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you, Zach. It's one that I have yet to finish. So
I doubt I will, but there's just no time. No time.
For me, the general consensus pick feels like it's always going to be The Last of Us. Wait, that was last generation, wasn't it?
Technically,
yes,
yeah, that's
that
last
PS3.
generation.
PS3, yeah. Just you always think about that game as a PS4 game, but it definitely
That's because they did the remaster of it,
like right
towards
away.
the beginning. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like almost making fun of you for having bought it on PS3 was so quick.
Well, they gave it to you. They gave it to you for free. If you bought it on PS3, you got the definitive version
Some
when
kind of
it
digital
released.
thing.
Yeah.
Well, then in Breath of the Wild, there you go. That's one.
Okay.
And then
Wow.
Right? I mean, how is that not? At least critically, it will be remembered as a classic. The game has a higher Metacritic score than any game ever.
That is probably the only Zelda game that most of my students know. You mentioned Zelda, and they're thinking Breath of the Wild. That's a lot of their first Zelda game ever.
That pains me physically, but I understand.
And it kind of saddens me a little because it's the only Zelda game that I've beaten that I never want to play again.
Well, it's just the idea of replaying it is so daunting.
That's part of it too, but I wouldn't mind jumping back in that world. 999 Korok seeds and however many shrines. Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah,
it's a time sink, but
and then the last one before you let me slip away is obviously Nier Automata is going to be remembered.
It
is. I don't like, not even with a personal bias. That game came out and really swept people off their feet. You know, everyone I know who's played that game has had an emotional reaction. Reviewed very well. It seems like it always comes up in the critical discourse.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be remembered.
Yeah, you're probably not wrong. I just also know there's a subset of people like me that can't speak critically on it because we haven't finished it, and just waiting for it to get that awesome moment. And I'm right there. That's another one I have to finish by the end of the year.
Next summer,
right?
You'll get to it.
Yeah, next summer. The plan was this summer, man, and then R2V2 happened. I can't help it. CB, what about you? What current generation games do you consider to be classics?
Well, first off, I'm gonna start with Sean Coates' comment because it kind of ties into the small list that I've put together. Sean Coates, No Man's Sky. I know, but hear me out. I can't think of any other video game off the top of my head, but I can think of plenty of films that are classics now that weren't critically panned or were box office bombs at the time. 2001: A Space Odyssey wasn't too well received, neither was Blade Runner. No Man's Sky, I think, will be more of a cult classic, since it's already making a comeback with all the new additions of to the games, and people are enjoying it and giving it positive retrospective reviews. Blade Runner also had multiple versions and re-releases, which would all culminate many, many years later into a final cut edition that people were very fond over. I'll bet that many years from now, on some benchmark anniversaries, Sean Murray will release a definitive complete edition that will get rave reviews. I'm sure some people will still hate this game and will never forgive the things that Sean Murray did. But I seem to recall one of you guys many episodes ago pointed out how short-lived gamer outrage tends to be.
Yeah, about 2 weeks. That's how long it lives.
Yes, I agree. For me, though, he does bring up a very good point. There will be those games that we kind of hate now, but we'll look upon fondly later. But there will also be the, Labor Waffle said, the trash classics. Games that I kind of love and have that, I guess, infamy. But for me, I made two short lists of...
Well, hang on. I got to say one thing before you give me your list. Because I don't know which is more mind-numbingly dull to me. Either playing No Man's Sky or watching Blade Runner.
I knew you... No! Blade Runner...
Yeah, I might actually have to fight you on that one because I love Blade Runner.
That is a hell of a film.
To be fair, I did not see the final cut or whatever version is, but I could not wait to watch that movie after seeing everybody's rave reviews about how incredible Blade Runner was. I fell asleep 3 separate times watching that movie the first time. I was so freaking bored.
Wow,
bored.
Wow, and I thought my opinions on BioShock Infinite were controversial.
Ooh, yeah.
That's all right. Now you may continue with your list, CB.
Okay, so I've compiled. This is my good list of games that I believe will be classics in the future for different reasons.
Okay.
The new Doom.
Okay.
I believe it kind of revitalized the first-person shooter. Life is Strange. I could see being a classic
Would you consider that a classic before the first season of Walking Dead?
Right, that's where my mind goes.
Yes.
That's all you got to say on that?
Yep, that's all I got to say.
Flat, yes.
That's gonna be a longer conversation.
That's a topic right there.
Yes, Stardew Valley.
Okay.
Cuphead. I think Cuphead is going to be a classic for quite some time for different reasons.
I feel a lot of personal bias in this list.
I was gonna say, yeah, I feel like Cuphead can't be a classic because of it's not accessible.
I'm gonna disagree with you. This is my classic list, not yours.
Oh well, hold on, I got a whole different list ready then.
Yeah, exactly.
But I just got a couple more. Dead Cells. I'm pretty sure Scott's gonna agree with me on that one though.
I love the game. I don't know if I would consider it a classic.
I will I think for me it's kind of almost perfected the roguelike.
I think that would be considered a cult classic.
Bloodborne. Sorry.
That was on my list. That's on my list.
That just came to me.
And then that's my good one. I'm gonna leave the last two because I'll probably get ridiculed for those.
Oh no! Well, now you got to hear them. No, I want to know.
Yeah, no.
Celeste and Shovel Knight.
I'd give you either one. Honestly,
Yeah, Shovel Knight was on my list.
I would give you either of those as potential classics.
Okay.
People really seem to be touched emotionally by that Celeste game.
Yes, I really enjoy it. But as far as trash classics, I have Mighty Number 9.
Wow.
And Life of Black Tiger.
Oh,
Life
boy.
of Black Tiger. I don't even know what that is.
The iPhone port game?
It's bad.
Yeah,
it's real bad. But the reason why I want to come back to Sean Coates' comment, I have a separate category here for games because they're going to have such a long life. No Man's Sky and Elite Dangerous.
Okay.
Warframe.
Warframe's another one. The reason why I put those ones into a separate category is because those games are so immense and just mind-bogglingly massive that they will have such a lifespan. When Elite Dangerous when No Man's Sky came out, I was already playing Elite Dangerous. And somebody calculated, they're like, if every single person on the planet was to play Elite Dangerous for their life, it would take something like 30 generations to discover every planet in the game. Like, it's stupid how big that game is.
I think I would lump in EVE Online with that too, into that category you're talking about.
Isn't that a little older?
It is. But
Well, it's hard to talk generations when you're talking about PC games.
I suppose.
So, Elite Dangerous is on console.
No, I know. I was talking about EVE Online.
But it's just, I remember when Elite Dangerous first came out, they're like, oh yeah, there's like 15 quintillion like stars, and each one of those stars has 0 to like 10 planets. I mean, the fact that game has such a huge area of play that it will never all be discovered. For me, that's something that's going to transcend time.
Yeah, don't you kind of
classic mode?
Don't you kind of wonder if Sean Murray is Peter Molyneux incarnate a little bit? Because that whole idea just seems like a Peter Molyneux idea.
I think you're talking about Elite right now, CB, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was talking about No Man's Sky.
For me, I prefer Elite Dangerous more because with a lot of the planets in No Man's Sky, they just seem to repeat a lot. You don't see that as much with Elite Dangerous. And the fact that there's like a community out there, like you have people who forget to fuel up their starship and get trapped like out in the middle of nowhere. And there's actually a group of people that have already banded together to like send missions out into these deep space areas to rescue these players.
That's awesome.
It's an amazing game. It's so much more fun to play than No Man's Sky. So
I can't disagree with you, but I've also not played Elite Dangerous, and I haven't played No Man's Sky since the updates. So,
and the difference between Peter Molyneux and Sean Murray is you knew Peter Molyneux was lying.
It's true. What happened to Milo? Remember that?
See, I don't think that was a lie. He had every intention to release that thing.
Yeah, he really wanted to.
I don't know what happened to that thing.
That was the weirdest E3 presentation I think I've ever seen.
What a weird moment in history Milo was.
Yep.
You know what happened to Milo? The same thing that happened to Tunic. Into the wind.
Man. Where is
I'm gonna
Tunic?
bring it up. I'm gonna bring it up every time until I see that damn game.
That game better be amazing, by the way.
It looked adorable.
It did. All right, as for me, I'm going to read a comment here from Chip Halt in the Facebook group. He says, I have 3. One is obvious, at least to me, and it's already been mentioned at least once. One is going to be questioned by some, but left a profound impact on me, and one is a mistake that I ever jumped back in. The latter is WoW Classic. I played WoW almost daily for 7 years, and when I left, I was done. Well, I'm back. The questionable choice is Detroit Become Human. I know it's Cage beating a drum, but I happen to think it's an important drum to hear. Finally, God of War. Super fun, smooth, and a compelling story. I just really liked what Chip wrote. I thought it was cool that he gave 3 and gave some really interesting reasons why he chose them all. So well done, sir. As for me, current gen games that I consider classics, we already mentioned Bloodborne, Shovel Knight. Horizon Zero Dawn would definitely be a classic in my mind. That is one that I would have zero problem jumping back into. Like if they just stopped making video games and I had nothing but time to go back and replay some of my favorites or actually get caught up on my backlog, Horizon Zero Dawn is one that I would start with to replay because that game was amazing, and I still have yet to see what that looks like in 4K on my TV. So that and these multiplayer games, man, Overwatch, Fortnite, Rocket League, these games are going to be classics, and maybe not to us. I mean, I like Rocket League, don't get me wrong, but I've not got into Overwatch. I've not got into Fortnite. But these are the games that kids are going to be remembering and talking about as, man, do you remember that classic Battle Royale game we used to play as kids all the time? Remember those goofy dances we used to do in elementary school? Remember how we would beg our parents for V-Bucks all the time? Man.
I have one thing to say about that. For me, a classic is a game that you're going to be able to go back and play.
Well, server issues are going to be a thing. I mean, moving forward.
People will keep Fortnite alive.
So
that's going to matter enough to people to put private servers together or something.
Yep.
Yeah, but I have a feeling it's going to wind up being like EverQuest. Like people still put EverQuest servers up, but nobody really plays.
Yeah, but EverQuest was never as big as World of Warcraft, right?
It was pretty big for quite some time.
And World of Warcraft is still kicking.
Don't they release new expansions for EverQuest still?
I don't know if they do. I think they do for EverQuest 2.
Could have sworn.
I don't know. After the 20th expansion, I was kind of like,
It's cool they got there.
Yeah. And the fact that they're going full circle and let's just release the original game and reset everything and let's just start from scratch with all the bugs and everything.
Hey, you know what? I would have more fun playing WoW Classic than I would WoW in its current iteration.
Why is that?
Because for me, it felt like there was more camaraderie between players during the WoW Classic time frame than there is in the current. There was a higher learning curve and more difficulty in what you had to do to accomplish certain feats. Then now it's like I can solo this raid boss now because my character's just so stupidly overpowered.
Gotcha. It's also a cultural, generational thing as well, probably.
I mean, the fact that I read the story where you have people lining up to turn in quests in WoW Classic right now.
Yeah,
like,
and actually
they were forming like queues to just sit here and be like, click, turn it in. Okay, your turn now. It felt more WoW when it was like in its pure form.
Wasn't that the story that Brandon Smith was talking about when we were talking about good gaming stories? Where he talked about like I think it was World of Warcraft or maybe it was Final Fantasy. What was that? Was it 12 the online one?
11,
where people were just like you said, lining up and waiting their turn and being respectful. Like you don't even see that in real life, but people are doing it in a video game where it literally doesn't matter, and that's awesome.
Yeah, but back to Chip's comment, God of War is absolutely going to be a classic. I didn't even put it on my list because I knew at some point it would get mentioned.
Yeah.
Red Dead Redemption 2 was probably going to be the same way.
Which is interesting because those are two games that you were not massive fans of, and you still consider them to be classics just because of their impact on the industry at the time.
Right. I don't think.
Right?
Yeah, I think God of War might it might go in the BioShock Infinite camp where people love it at the time, and maybe it doesn't age super well in people's memories. But I think God of War is a game that is going to. It feels like it's already affected so many people. It's so like it's stuck in everybody's craw. God of War, which is good.
All right. Well, that was our topic. Wow, that turned out to be a much more in-depth conversation than I expected it to be. So thanks to everybody that wrote in comments. If we didn't get to yours, we apologize. But be sure to check out the Facebook group for that post, as well as Discord and Twitter if you'd like to catch up on some of the other comments. Before we get onto the games we've been playing, I want to say hello to some new people in our social circles. Over on Facebook, we got a new member by the name of Mr. Marvel TV. And then over on Discord, I apologize. I missed a bunch of you. These are some R2V2 people that I did not mention last week, but we've got Fat Meow, Wow Such a Maze, Joe B. Rocket, Sawfly5, Ling Jizu, Neum, XX Lord Rekka XX, again, Mr. Marvel TV, Sergeant Halo, Boogie Bob 233, and Aged Bat Dad. Welcome to the Discord community. If you would like to join that conversation over there, be sure to find the link in our show notes. We got an awesome group over there as well. Also, if you could, do us a favor and head over to iTunes and drop us a review. Let us know what you think of the show, ways we can improve, and we will read them on the show if you do that. Also, several written reviews on the site for you right now. There's like 4 new ones I dropped today, including a game that Nate reviewed called Fight and Rage that he raved about. You're going to want to check out that review and keep posted on thegamingoutsider.com. But we are going to go ahead and talk about the games we've actually been playing. Zach, give me some good news. Do I get a break this week?
Yes, I think you will, Scott. Oh my. Sorry, I was looking over the list and maybe, Scott, maybe you can breathe. Well, we start with, I think this is Bungie's first expansion since being free, right? Destiny 2 Shadowkeep. On PS4, Xbox One, PC, October 1st. Seems like a big deal.
I couldn't tell you if that's their first free one. I know that people were up in arms when they had to pay for extra stuff for Destiny 2.
Oh, sorry, I meant Bungie is free from Activision's ironclad grip.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying the DLC was free. I was like,
oh no, it won't be free.
No way. I meant yay for Bungie. It's their own game now.
Gotcha.
They're playing by their rules, Scott.
I have a feeling there's still some Activision lingering in that one because it was probably under development when they were still with them.
Maybe.
So
yeah. And then Anime Mechs Collide and Mobile Suit Gundam Battle Operation 2 on PS4, also on October 1st. I don't know if you guys caught the trailer for this, but it looked pretty neat. You get to make your own pilot and build your own Gundam, and like it's a multiplayer-focused game. It looked weirdly social.
I've never got into Gundam, and I just feel like that's not a place for me to start, but who knows?
I will.
It looks kind of cool. I don't really care about Gundam either.
I like mech games, so.
There's something about the almost MMO aspect to the trailers that appealed to me on that one. But then you get to talk to people in the Cyberpunk future with NeoCab on PC and Switch October 3rd.
That has got Thomas Beck's written all over it.
You're not wrong.
He loves those point-and-click adventures, as you'll hear in a few minutes.
And here we go again. Ghost Recon Breakpoint. PS4, Xbox One, PC, October 4th. Prepare to lose 200 hours to yet another Ubisoft game.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't be any less interested in a game. I don't know why Ghost Recon Breakpoint does nothing for me, but it truly does nothing for me.
No, the most appealing thing to me is that John Bernthal is doing cool monologues.
Yeah. And that's
swell.
Just me never getting into Ghost Recon, but...
Well, I don't know. Wildlands and Breakpoint are such different things than Ghost Recon.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Wildlands, so I'll probably wind up diving into this one.
I don't think I would play this game if it were free. And then...
Wow.
It's just... I don't need to jump into a 100-hour shooter. I just don't need to do it.
I mean, I did it with Division 2, and I love that game, so I'd give it a try, but I just can't get excited for it for some reason. And everybody on our Discord is just amped for this game. And
hey, yeah, I don't want to take anyone's excitement away. I gave Wildlands and On a shot, put like 12, 15 hours into it, and I wanted to take a nap most of the time. No. But hey, Ghostbusters video game remastered coming PS4, Xbox One, Switch, PC October 4th. There's something strange in the neighborhood.
I actually never played the original, so if I can get my hands on this is probably the one that would pique my interest the most. I know Ghost Recon fans are just like screaming at their iPods right now that I would rather play a remake of a several-year-old game than Ghost Recon Breakpoint, but I want to see what I missed out on that game. Everyone says it was actually really good.
It was pretty
solid. Good. Yeah, I had it for 360, so.
I mean, it's Ghostbusters 3.
What about you guys? Any of those, are you gonna, what's at the top of your list of those 5 games?
Ghost Recon Breakpoint.
All right. Zach?
I think Neocab.
Neocab, really?
Yeah, I mean, it looks really appealing. Like, none of these games totally blow my mind. That Mobile Suit Gundam thing looks really neat, but I'm not going to pay money for it. I'm going to be real. But Neocab looks like something I would pay money for.
Yeah, in reality, this is going to be catch-up week for me. I'm going to finally take a deep dive into Control. So
good.
Unless something happens along the way. But let's go ahead and talk about the games that we've been playing. And just a quick mention, all the games that we're going to talk about, which there is a lot of them this week, are listed in the show notes with links to the trailer. So if any of these sound interesting to you, head over to those show notes and you can watch the video and see if it's something that you're interested in. Zach, you finally got your hands on Remnant from the Ashes, which you're playing on PS4. I know you've been amped for this game. I even saw you post on Twitter saying, guess I'm going to have to play Remnant. And then look what happened. You finally got to play it. So tell me about this game, because it looks like I know you hate the term and people hate it when people say this. It looks like a Souls game.
No, I mean,
with gun.
I think we need to admit Souls-like is a genre at this point, right?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Last week we had sci-fi and vampire Souls.
True.
And now here's Gun Souls.
Gun Souls.
Yes. Also, Remnant from the Ashes. Quick note: worst name maybe in video game history.
Okay, why is that?
This is a really boring title. Does that make you think of anything? Remnant from the Ashes.
Doesn't really tell me what it's about. No, I mean, the words actually work together, but I don't know what it's. The ashes of what?
No.
It's a remnant of what? It's kind of ambiguous.
Yes, I know. I have a nitpick on unnecessary subtitles. This is one of them.
Okay.
Zero Dawn was another. Anyway, yes, it is Bloodborne with guns. It is more Bloodborne than Dark Souls. For the people that means something to, they know what that means.
So not as much turtling,
right? Because there's no
dodging.
There's no shield, so you have to dodge. So
Gotcha.
It is more Bloodborne in that nature. You're really relying on your invincibility frames. But to the point of the game, it is, if you have played a Souls game, it's one of those. You explore an area. The enemies are tough as hell. The odds are always stacked against you. If you rest at a checkpoint, you do get your health back, but it also respawns all the enemies in the area. So it's that risk and reward. As usual, I mean, it's so Souls-like that all of the items have descriptions, and that's how you learn about the lore of the world, just like the Dark Souls games. But it's all about guns. Is the big shift.
Third-person gun combat, by the way, which I know, the Souls-like game is obviously going to be third person, or maybe that's obvious to me anyway. How does that work though? Because if it's ranged, when I think Souls games, I think lots of dodging. So
yes,
is it?
So you're still, that's a good point, because that was definitely my first question, but it is still very dodge oriented. You will have either enemies will have projectiles, which you can see coming, kind of like the Doom reboot.
Okay.
So you will see them throw like a dagger or whatever at you, and that's your cue to dodge out of the way and then try to snap back your aim. And that sounds potentially disorienting, but the game has it's really good about if you dodge away and you hit the aim trigger. It's really good about snapping your aim right back to that enemy you're looking at.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Which is very handy. And the game starts the first 30 minutes or so with only melee combat. Just get past that, because it's really confusing and not very good, because you can't lock onto your enemies, so you're just wailing this machete around. But once you get a gun, the game comes alive, and So you'll have enemies throwing projectiles, or you'll have some that'll rush you and try to like attack you with a sword, or you'll have somebody who's summoning more enemies in the background. There's this really gnarly bastard who has a bow and arrow, and those bow and arrows hurt because dodging is so essential. Because if you get hit once, that's about half your health bar.
Oh wow!
Much like a Souls game.
That was gonna be my next question. Is Souls games are known for their difficulty, and what's the ninja one that came out recently that CB you were playing? I know you and Chad were playing.
Sekiro,
yeah. Is this where does this fall in terms of difficulty, or bash your head against controller toughness?
It is pretty tough. The basic enemies are a little bit easier to manage than I would say those games, but the bosses are still gnarly. Like, they still do not pull any punches. It's very co-op focused, this game. It's much more easy to navigate than, say, a Dark Souls or Bloodborne, where it's very almost obtuse how to get into co-op. This you can just set like into a public server, and people can just hop in and hop out, and it makes like the bosses get double or triple health based on how many people are in there. So it is really co-op focused. It's really nice. I've been leaving my thing public, and it's really neat because you can pick each other up, which is nice in co-op, because otherwise you're just down for the count.
Right.
And it's still got that Souls difficulty where you only get about 3 heals per checkpoint. So it still has that tension, and it's very, you have guns, right? So at first you just kind of want to spin around and shoot stuff, and you learn very fast that you cannot do that. It requires every bit of your attention and your skill and prowess, as any Souls-like game does.
Okay, so who you're recommending this game for then?
I mean, almost strictly fans of the genre.
That's it?
Yeah, it is. If you're looking for a new kind of shooter, it doesn't feel like that. If it's less of a shooter with a Souls skin, it's more of a Souls with a shooter skin. Like it's a Souls game first, and they just kind of made it about ranged combat, and it works really well. And because of that, and no other game in this genre has really done that, it feels very fresh, and it feels cool, and it feels like you're mastering a new combat system, which is really nice.
Very cool. So that is Remnant from the Ashes, which you were playing on PS4. Is that exclusive to that platform, or is it also on the other?
It's everywhere. It's from Gunfire Games, who did Darksiders, and I feel like you can tell because their MO is taking a well-established genre and then putting it in the post-apocalypse. So here they have done that again. And it's kind of an interesting apocalypse, too. It's all about tree demons. You don't see that every day.
That's true.
There's an evil force called the Root, and it's pretty cool. It's very esoteric, which is what you want.
On the nose.
Well, you want this genre to kind of be ambiguous about everything, so everyone talks in like very poetic phrases and stuff. It's a lot of fun. It's really great.
Gotcha.
I want to play much more. Oh, and I guess I should mention the campaigns are randomized.
Oh, really? So it's not like a set path?
No, it is. You get you get Earth is the first one, post-apocalyptic Earth, and I think you go to like a snow region, a desert region, and it's randomized. The order of those are randomized in, and your bosses are randomized every time too, so you can't really plan for the boss. You don't know until you see it, which is kind of cool. It kind of inspires replayability, and they have a whole mode for that too. If you just want to get a quick randomized campaign, you can.
Very cool. It sounds like a Souls fan's dream right there.
Yeah, it's something new in the genre. Absolutely. I recommend it to any of those people. My people. Every time. CV. Freedom Finger.
Yeah.
Back again.
Yeah. In its full ridiculous glory.
This is a modern classic for you, right?
I'm loving this game, man. I will say, first and foremost, before we dive too deep into this, if you are easily offended by a wide variety of things, stay away from this game.
Yeah, also, if you take your Switch to school to let your students play with your Switch, make sure that this game's title screen is not on the main menu while you're loading up Mario Kart for them. Because they will notice it.
There's a large, obscene gesture.
I mean, on mine, it's covered up by like an explosion or something, so you can't actually see what it is. But they knew. They put 2 and 2 together, and I was worried I was going to get in trouble, but yeah.
So,
Freedom Finger, baby. So yeah, you've played this game before, right?
yes, I got a demo version of this game.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And basically I played the exact same thing that Scott did at E3.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah,
because it's a horizontal shooter.
We knew from minute one this was your game.
Oh yeah. I will admit the story is quite ridiculous. You play as a pilot who basically flies a middle finger to the moon.
A spaceship
Yes,
shaped
your
like a
spaceship
middle
is
finger.
a middle finger. And you are flying to the moon to eradicate the Chinese communists who have taken over the moon. And you run into a multitude of different types of bad guys, from Chinese communists to Russians. I believe there's aliens. I haven't quite found them yet. But this game is violent, too. Like, there's a boss where you fight against a peace-loving Russian space station, and you blow them out of the sky.
Is that the one where they're like throwing the white flag?
Yep.
And then they just like dump all their garbage and so you're actually like fighting against the garbage.
The garbage, and there's random astronauts, like cosmonauts, flying out that you can shoot as well.
And here's the thing that gets me about this game is the licensing for this game sounds like a nightmare because every single level has its own licensed track of music. The first one is this awesome song by Red Fang that I think you and I must have listened to at least 50 times since we played the game. It's great. They got Nolan North to do the voice in this game, along with just a list of other well-known voice actors for a shmup where you play as a middle finger. Kudos that they were able to put this together, and it's a fun little game.
So honestly, I'm completely surprised that this game was even made in today's political climate, just because of how offensive it can be. There are times where this game is Duke Nukem level offensive.
That seems tough.
Yeah. I mean, when you look around your cockpit in your cabin during like the cutscenes, I mean, not only is there large amounts of drugs, but sexually offensive things as well.
Wow.
So, shake it, baby.
Yeah. So, man, I'm really enjoying the actual like shooter aspect of this game. I do find the actual storyline to be very comical, but there will be a large amount of people that will be offended by some of the things that are said in this game.
Well, I mean, with a ship that is shaped like a middle finger, what do you expect? But one thing I want to touch on, and we talked about this when we played the preview of the game, is it's not just a shooter. There's also a mechanic where you can actually turn your spaceship into a fist, and it actually thrusts forward in like a punching motion.
Which is actually part of some of the level design. Like there'll be switches that you have to punch to open up gates to pass through. But you can also grab enemy ships and use their firing mechanics as well.
Right, which is a really clever concept for a shmup, actually.
Yes, so it's like, oh, this thing has missiles that it shoots, so you can actually grab it and shoot missiles. I'm just really amazed at how cleverly designed the actual gameplay is. It's very cutesy animation. I mean, it's nothing over the top, but it is a solid horizontal shooter.
All right, again, that is Freedom Finger, and you're playing it on PC. I've been playing it on Switch, and it sounds like you recommend it.
Yes, for those who are not easily offended.
All right, sounds good.
And speaking of games, you've been playing a little game called Grindstone that seems kind of up your alley as well.
Yeah, I got to tell you guys, I'm getting more and more impressed with this Apple Arcade thing. I've barely scratched the surface of all the games that are available on this platform, and these games are great mobile games. And Grindstone has become one of my favorites, which may not appeal to a lot of people, but I really love this game. It's a great little game. Did you get a chance to watch the trailer?
Yeah, I watched the trailer and I liked the animation style for this.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of reminds me of a lot of the little like match 3 kind of games.
Well, that's the thing is if you look at it, it looks like a match 3 game because it's a board full of different creatures that are different colors, but you're not matching like 3 colors to make them disappear like you would think. Instead, what you're doing is you're tracing. So you actually have to trace as many like creatures in a row in order to make them disappear. But once you reach a certain number of them, if you get 10 of them, it will drop a gem on the board that allows you to, if you lined it up and end a string of colors near a gem, you swipe to the gem, and then the gem lets you start a new string of colors. So you basically build all these chains. So the goal of each map is to get a certain number of enemies cleared, but that's the easy part. It gets a little bit more difficult because once you do that, there are 2 other objectives on each map. One is to unlock a treasure chest. In order to unlock a treasure chest, you have to get a key from another creature down there. So you have to work your way through the board on there to get the key, work your way back to the treasure chest. And then there are these enemies that have a crown, and you have to work your way to kill the enemies. The trick with killing the enemies is you can't just run into them. These enemies have hit points on them, and you have to have a certain amount of these smaller enemies stacked up in order to be able to do that many hit points on that. So if he has 5 hit points on him, you can't damage him, or you can damage him. However many chains you have going will do that amount of damage on him, if that makes sense. I say that a lot too. I got to stop saying that. But it sounds like a very simplistic game, and it is, but it ramps up in difficulty quite early, especially if you're a completionist and want to get all 3 of the objectives on each one. But it is a clever little game. They keep throwing different things for you that throw you for a loop, that make you think differently, that actually improve your play style and the way that you look for these patterns. And it's really great. I'm liking it.
Yeah, I mean, it looks cute. I wish some of these games, I wish I had an Apple product to play some of these with. But I'm willing to bet there'll be a similar clone of this game pop up somewhere. So,
and the Apple Arcade is a hell of a deal.
Seriously.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I don't have an Apple product.
Yeah. But it's great. It also, you unlock blueprints for different pieces of armor that you can get, or different abilities that you can use in the middle of fights. Like one allows you to have a block skill so that you can actually protect yourself. So if you leave yourself exposed, you're safe for the next turn. Potions that replenish your health. There's one that lets you jump from any point in the map at any point that you want to start a whole fresh chain. It's all about strategy. It's all about eyeballing and seeing the correct path of action to take to clear the maps. And I'm really digging it. It's become my new game that I'm playing, first thing in the morning or as I'm winding down for bed. I really like the game quite a bit. And if you're on Apple Arcade, I highly recommend you checking it out. Again, it is called Grindstone.
I actually have one other quick question about it. With any of these maps, are they timed at all?
There's no timer whatsoever. It's all just purely
This is Scott we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I was just wondering because with some games like that, there tends to be that very slow timer that passes. So
if there is one, I haven't encountered it yet, but I just played a level before we recorded, and it introduced a whole new mechanic to me. So they may incorporate that down the road, but I'm only about 20 levels in at this point, so who knows what's ahead of me. But
cool.
There's even boss fights that are really clever. It's a fun little game, but it's not your typical match 3. It's a lot of tracing. But the way that they've utilized the UI in it makes it very intuitive and very easy to pick up and play, but tough to master.
The nice thing about Apple Arcade, you don't even have to think about microtransactions.
Exactly. None of the games have microtransactions, so you just play it to your heart's content, and I love that.
I envy you there.
All right, well, that's what the 3 of us have been playing. We've got some pre-recorded games reviews for you to check out. Quite a bit, actually. Bob is going to talk to you about a game called Greedfall. Nate comes in to talk about a game called Fight and Rage, as well as Legend of the Skyfish, and then he gets a chance to talk about Mario Kart Tour. We'll wrap things up with Rel talking about The Walking Dead, the Telltale Definitive Edition, and Thomas talking about the DLC for Mutant Year Zero called Seed of Evil, and then finally a point-and-click adventure called Whispers of a Machine. Quite a bit of games here for you to check out. Some really good ones buried in there, so be sure to check that out. We'll play those for you right now. Hey, Bob. How you doing, man?
I'm living the dream. How about yourself there, Scott?
I'm doing all right. I'm excited to talk to you about this game called Greedfall, which came from Spiders Games, and because I am just very interested and intrigued by what's going on in this game. But before we get into it, I want to say a special thank you to Sandbox Strategies for hooking you up with a review copy of this one so you could check it out for us. So before we get into like the nitty-gritty of the gameplay, I'm really curious about the setting of Greedfall because at first glance it looks like it takes place in a real location, like, I don't know, France or something like that. But after watching the trailers, it looks like it is completely fictional. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is completely accurate. It does take place in what you would assume is like a 17th century France or England or Spain. Just because of the wardrobe, it does look like our world during that time. But it is a completely made up area, tier 4D and whatnot. Made up factions and people, and I mean nothing's at all real, as is in most games. But I mean, at first glance, you think, oh, it looks like it's going to be France or Spain or something like that, just with how they're dressed. But
that's interesting. So talk to me about the story, because this looks like a massive game. It looks like an open world Skyrim-esque world associated with it. Is that accurate?
That is exceptionally accurate, my friend. It is ridiculously open world. They talk about like 35, 40 hours of gameplay and just dozens upon dozens of side missions that you don't have to do, but you can do. That's on top of that 35 to 40 hours. I put in well over 40 hours on the main storyline, so there's a considerable amount of gameplay. I mean, I know that I've put in a lot of grinding for some games, to get better weapons and things like that. But the last game that I remember actually, like RPG, taking this kind of time is, probably one of the Final Fantasies. Putting in 140, 160 hours into like Final Fantasy 7 or something of that nature.
Okay.
So yeah, it definitely eats a good bit of your time, but the time kind of flies. You really lose track because you're so immersed into the story.
That sounds interesting. And I really want to get an understanding of how this gameplay works, because the trailers seem to focus a great deal on diplomacy in terms of either how you interact with the political aspects of what's going on in the world, but also the personal relationships you have with your people. So can you talk a little bit about that, but then also talk about how the combat works, because I didn't really see a whole lot with that.
Well, the storyline is something that they call nodal storytelling, where it's basically if you think about a decision, and then you could have made two different decisions, so then that kind of branches off, and it goes that way where it's different decisions kind of sparks different paths. But you can also tie in different, kind of come back, making different decisions about who you're helping and who you're not. You've got multiple characters that can help you in your party. You have 3 people in a party at a time, and you have about half a dozen characters to choose from with different skill sets, abilities, and they grow. You can't really adjust what they get. Like, you can't adjust their agility. You can change their weapons and armor and things of that nature, even how they look a little bit, but for the most part, you can't really control it. They have a kind of a set sort of skills, like a magic user is going to stay a magic user, etc. But it's really just how you handle every situation. It's whether you can do a side mission and help someone out and get on their good side, or you can also help them and kind of not do what they wanted and get on their bad side, or just not do it at all and get on their bad side. So it's all about reputation and talking to people, not only, different people that you run into that maybe give you a side quest, but then a main mission and maybe a side quest comes off of that, or even your own party. They have little side missions that you can help with. And it really just kind of takes off from there, because there's so many things tied into basically what is a character's reputation, your main character's reputation. Because you can see a list of all the different factions and characters, and it'll say like, you're distrusting, or you're on good terms, or you're friendly. And when you're friendly, say like in your party, you don't have to be friendly to have them in your party, but if you are, they bring different skills to the fight.
Mhm.
Whereas, one might be more prone to heal you, or because you've got them in the party, maybe because you're friendly now, you've got more vigor, and because they're in your party and you're friendly with that extra vigor, you can carry more gear or even equip heavier armor. But if you're not on good terms, they don't really bring that skill to help you.
This sounds very stressful to me because when games like this, where you're trying to get on people's good side and or maybe intentionally get on their bad side, I tend to always play to try to make everybody happy and like me. Is it possible to do this, or are you forced to make decisions that are going to make one faction happy and one faction really upset with you?
You can do that. You can make everyone miserable, or it is feasible, which I've been doing, attempting to make everyone happy.
Okay.
Like
Is it difficult?
It's it's really not difficult at all. It's you can kind of see how different, or even choosing things to try and make them happy might make someone else unhappy. But then you can use other things, like you can increase your skill, your charisma skill, to kind of talk them out of being mad, or things of that nature. Like, no, let me explain real quick. And they're like, oh, all right, I get it, okay. And then they
Sounds like me.
Yeah, it's exactly, and it's a lot like me too. It's because I generally like to play these games how I would play. Like if I was really that character, just to be more immersed into it, like, would I be a magic user? Would I be more of a, rogue-like, etc.? But I also try and treat those answers the same way too. How would Bob treat it? Not how would the main character, Desarte, treat a situation.
But you can also be a jackwagon if you want to. Like, if that's really how you want to play the game,
absolutely
right?
can. Yes, you can go along. You can just screw with everybody. Yeah, you could. You could ruin everyone's day, but you will still get along in the storyline. It can just make things a little more difficult. You might have to do a little bit of extra work and whatnot. But, because when you have a better reputation with people, you don't have to do all the extra side missions all the time. You can,
Sure,
but it doesn't force you to do it.
Gotcha.
Like there's a time like, oh, I need to talk to this head of the village. Okay, well, if you want to, you got to go through me, and you got to do me a favor first. But if you're on good terms with them already, go on in, whatever.
Nice.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, a game like this is going to kind of be predicated on its fun factor. And talk to me a little bit about the combat and how that works.
The combat is fairly simplistic. It's nothing crazy. You just kind of roam around. You eventually do run into beasts in the wild, or even just kind of rogue people just wandering around, either in factions or not.
It's
Even
third-person combat, right?
Yes, it's third-person combat. Even in town at night, there's gangs of people roaming around looking to take your cheddar. So you also got to watch out for that, because it's goes from day to night, and during the night there's definitely people out trying to be not so nice, and the creatures can get a little stronger. But
Okay, so is this melee combat?
it's melee. There's there's magic. There's a lot of things you can make. You can learn skills to make traps and bombs, things like that. And
So it sounds like The Witcher combat.
yes, it's similar to. Actually, yeah, that's actually pretty good. That's a really good. I didn't even think about The Witcher, but yes, it is very Witcher combat-esque. You can't really control the people in your party. They get to do their own thing. I mean, you can equip them with weapons and such, but they get to choose how they attack and their skills, and they're not very aggressive by any means, but they will, use their skill set. They will heal you or repair your armor at certain times. So,
but it's real-time combat. We're not talking about like a JRPG where there's turn-based combat or anything like that. It's just straight-up action.
It is real-time combat, but it does have a little trigger where you can freeze the action so that you can think about your next step.
Mm-hmm.
But you also can't just go through and do it. You got to wait until you get back in the action to actually follow through.
Gotcha. Okay. So do you recommend Greedfall for our listeners to check out?
I would recommend Greedfall, absolutely. It's a fun game. It's not the best game in the world by any means, but it's a lot of fun. It does have some glitches. It does have some bugs that kind of need to be worked out. And they're just little things that bug you. They're not really huge things like you can't play a certain mission or you can't do certain things in the game. They're just little nuances that they really need to kind of refine and smooth out. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I might wait for it to go on sale, to be honest, but it should be played. It's a lot of fun, and I think that if they take care of this and they treat it with respect, and they kind of learn from their mistakes and make another one in a couple of years, I think that they could have a nice little set of games on their hands.
Sounds good, Bob. Thanks so much for reviewing that for us. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks a lot, Scott.
All right, we'll catch you later.
Yeah, buddy.
Hey, Nate, how's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I think we officially have to welcome you to the Gaming Outsider team because some people may not know you, but you were responsible for all the title cards and all the artwork for the Gaming Outsider. And a few weeks ago, we actually made you one of the Elite 8, as it were. We used to be the first 7, and now we're the Elite 8. So welcome to the Gaming Outsider team, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Well, I've always kind of been here, but officially, I guess, on a bigger scale.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm really excited, and it's been a long time coming. Should have taken care of that a long time ago, but real happy to have you here, especially because you're reviewing some games for us as well. You've been playing a game called Fight and Rage, which comes from Seba Games Dev. I believe it's just this one developer by the name of Sebastian that's made this game. Is that correct?
Correct.
And it is a beat-em-up game, which I know you're a big fan of. You saw this trailer and said, man, I got to play that game. And I read your written review, and you were just raving about this game. What makes this game, Fight and Rage, stand out so much for you in a modern age when these games are considered more classics?
So when I first got my Genesis growing up as a kid, some of my top picks for beat-em-up games were Streets of Rage 2, Turtles in Time was not on Sega. I don't remember if it was on Sega. I think it was on Super Nintendo.
Super Nintendo, yep.
But the gameplay itself really kind of draws me into those style of games. So to see something that came out that was modern in gameplay and features on a newer console, but yet had the aesthetic of an older game, really kind of appealed to me.
Yeah, when I was looking through screenshots and videos of this, it looked like you could put these filters on it, and I don't know the correct terminology. You would know better than I do, but they made it look like it was on a CRT, where the corners were almost like rounded, like they were sunken in.
Yeah, they had a CRT filter. They have a CRT monitor filter, which makes it look like you're looking at like an arcade cabinet. Then obviously they have like scan lines. You can turn down like the gamma and vibrance of it to make it look more washed out. Like there's a lot of like video filters and features like built into the game that make it look as old or as new as you want. So if you don't like that aesthetic, you can turn it off. But if you do and you're a fan of like the old school look or feel, you can turn it on.
Does that old school look include like the blink where you get a whole bunch of enemies on screen at once and they kind of disappear or flash? Is that in there?
No, they don't have that. I mean, it does play crisp like a modern game, so they don't have those effects because you're not limited by the amount of memory that can be on screen at once.
Sure.
Being a newer game, you have quite a bit more technical hardware to push something like that, and being a game of this style, you don't really need a whole lot of oomph to get the game across. Where it shines is just controls and not, video.
Well, talk to me about the controls a little bit, because again, in your review, you just raved about how much fun this game is to play. What makes it better than other beat 'em ups that I mean, it's not a brand new thing for this genre to be resurfaced in today's era of gaming, but you made it sound like this one just is one that needs to be played by people. I want to know why.
One of the main reasons that I enjoyed it as much as some of the previous beat 'em up greats would probably be the tightness of the controls and how you actually interact with your character. So if you're moving, there's little to no lag in your actual movement on the character. Now, I did play this in handheld mode. I did not play this docked. So I'd like to see how that works with like a Pro Controller or something like that.
Right.
But the way that it controls was very tight, very responsive. It gave you kind of a lot of variety as far as attacking different enemies in a certain way. There's combos built into it. So it can be as simple or as involved as you want it to be, depending on your skill level. So you can easily pick this up, but to learn and to perfect the way you engage with the controls that they give you can take a long time.
Okay. Some other positives you had about this game was the music, which the music in the trailer, if that's indicative of the rest of the game, sign me up, because it's just my kind of, I don't know, squelching is not the right word, but squealing guitar riffs and rock music. I really loved it.
It was great, and it was a decent variety too, so it's not like the same track throughout the game. Every level has a different track to go along with it. You do have that driving rock beat, but there are certain sections in the game, like there was a swanky nightclub where you have like more of a jazzy style tune. Even in Streets of Rage, you had a like a bar type area. Same thing, you had more of a jazzy type tune, and then the beach was more kind of like a relaxed jazzy. Like it was definitely the soundtrack definitely accents the actual game itself, which was fantastic.
Awesome. You also mentioned that the game is pretty short, but it lends itself to replay value to play it over and over and over again. Why is that?
So, and here's the thing, with beat 'em ups, you typically don't have a terribly involved story.
Right.
Like the story is not large. What that lacks in story-wise, you have in replayability. So, I mean, if you're familiar with Streets of Rage, I'm sure you are.
Sure.
It's a great game to go with a bunch of buddies and just beat the crap out of bad dudes. I mean, that's the premise of this game.
Mm-hmm.
So it lends itself to focusing on the combos and focusing on beating up bad guys rather than building like a huge narrative behind it. That's not the whole idea behind a beat 'em up. I mean, it's just a mindless brawler, essentially.
Right. Well, hey, that's a good thing. But what about things? What's the draw to go through and play it again other than just the sheer fun factor?
So there's a lot of unlockables in here. So you can play through the game, beat it in, I don't know, probably 45 minutes to an hour if you're looking to do like a one run and then done. Which for $20, that doesn't really make sense to me. But like I said, there are different paths within the game that you can take to kind of play this over and over again. So just because you play it one way the first time does not mean you'll have like the same ending or same path the second time. So there are different paths to take depending on what you choose, what path you choose to follow in certain levels.
So I assume, just from hearing you say this and reading your review, that you do recommend this game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was shocking to me how well thought out this game was, how well it was brought together, and how well it kind of stacks up against titles of that caliber.
All right, man.
They did a fantastic job.
I can't wait to play it. You said it's a 3-player co-op local, right?
Correct.
It looks...
Or there's different modes in there, so you can have a 1v1, almost like a Street Fighter.
Oh, really?
That's what I'm saying. So during playing, you unlock these different modes. There's like a horde mode where you can fight waves of different baddies. There's a 1v1 mode where you can fight versus a CPU. There's a training mode so you can learn all the combos if you want to go back through. And then there's different costumes and different characters to unlock.
That sounds really good, man. Again, that game is called Fight and Rage, and I got to give a shout out to Super Indie Games for hooking me up with a copy on that one so we could check it out.
I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, I love that you love that game, man. And if you love the fighting genre, or not fighting genre, but the beat 'em up genre, this sounds like one that people shouldn't miss. It was a PC game originally a while ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I think it was 2017 is when that came out on PC.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a couple years, but this is a title that definitely belongs on console, and it's really nice to see it finally come to console.
Very cool. Another game that you've been playing a little bit is called Legend of the Skyfish, which, after watching the trailer, I got some hardcore Zelda vibes from seeing that. From what you played so far, is that accurate?
Not so much in like the combat, but the puzzle progression is very close to like a Zelda inspired. You do have different weapons that you can obtain. They're all going to be like your hook sword. It's kind of like a sword, but it also like shoots out like a rope with like a hook on it, so you can actually move to different platforms or pull enemies closer towards you.
Oh, you mean like a hook shot?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to go there to be it. It definitely does not play like a Zelda title.
Okay.
It is definitely its own thing. It's kind of cut and dry, being a cheaper title on there, I mean, they did a fantastic job. The aesthetic is beautiful. There's quite a bit of time to put into the game as you go along. But as far as being engaging or having a story behind it, I mean, there's a story, but it's not quite on Zelda level. I mean, it's not a Zelda title.
Right, but you're still having fun with it, it sounds like, yeah?
Yeah, the puzzles are pretty cool. They're fairly easy. There's some tricky ones that make you think a little bit. There are some bosses, like at the end, there's like 8 different islands that you need to kind of defeat these totems. And when you go and you have a boss, and then you have a final boss at the end, obviously. So it's pretty good. I mean, for I think it's $5 or $6, it's definitely worth it just to check it out. Just don't expect much in the story department.
Gotcha. Again, that is called Legend of the Skyfish. And I want to talk about one more game before we let you go, because I think more than anybody else, you have been playing Mario Kart Tour the most. And admittedly, I only played one track or race, whatever you want to call it. And you've got 2 different choices of control schemes on this. And I chose they didn't call it expert, but the recommended way to play it, which was very squirrely. I felt like you weren't even turning; it's just you were automatically drifting whenever you moved. Did you get the same impression?
Oh, it's definitely all that and a bag of chips as far as steering like that. It's very quirky, so your direction works like you said. When they ask you what control scheme you'd like, they give you an option to automatically drift. But that also is the same kind of area where your finger goes to actually steer. So like you said, you're automatically drifting instead of steering. So you kind of have to hop back and forth to get yourself into the right path you want to take, like around corners and turns and stuff like that.
Now, when I first played it, there was no online availability to play with people. Are you able to do that yet, or is it still playing against the AI?
It's still playing against AI, but reading a couple of the articles about it, they are going to have a multiplayer mode soon, which they have a friend code system where you can share your friend code with buddies, add a buddy on there, and it sounds like they're going to be having a multiplayer tournament style, so you can, get a whole bunch of buddies, say, hey, let's get on Mario Kart, and maybe have a lobby area.
Okay. Now, this is a free-to-download game, and you can pretty much play right off the bat without having to pay anything, but that usually comes with some kind of microtransaction aspect on it. So what kind of wall are we looking at to keep me from playing it?
So the game functions off of this currency called rubies. No, first and foremost, I have not paid anything to unlock anything in the game, which is kind of nice. So I've unlocked quite a few carts, quite a few of the gliders, and a couple of the drivers as well. But I haven't paid anything, so later on when you want to get upgraded carts or you want to upgrade your levels in there, it helps to have those rubies. And you can earn them in the game, but it takes far longer to earn them to pay for them.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to pay for them, they're really pricey, honestly.
What are we talking, like $20?
Well, so for a basic... So think of it as like a card pack system or like a loot box. You need 5 rubies to unlock or get one roll, essentially, with one surprise item.
Okay.
And you're talking, I think it's like $2 or $3 for 5 rubies.
Oh, wow.
So it can get pricey, and obviously they have different tiers depending on how many there are, and they give you a discount if you buy like a whole bunch. But you can easily earn rubies just by racing through the game. So you can actually unlock challenges by completing certain things. So if you go into a race and you, say, hit 3 different enemies within one race with a green shell, you get like a sticker you can add to your player card. And it's almost built like a bingo style board where if you can like line up 3 in a row, you get coins, and then the coins you can use toward the shop, which also let you buy different characters and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. It sounds pretty cool. Are you seeing a lot of legs on this game? Is it something you're going to be playing for a while, or is it kind of fun to play at the beginning but not going to stick around?
It's actually a lot of fun to play. Right now I've maxed out everything that they've released for it. Like I've gone through all the tracks, replayed all the tracks to complete everything with a 5-star because I'm kind of a completionist as far as that goes, as Mario Kart goes.
Right.
So I've gone through and played everything to where I have nothing right now, but every day it seems like they open up a new tour or circuit for you to play, or every other day. And I kind of looked at kind of their future ones, and it seems like they stagger it to almost like a weekly thing coming up here. So I don't know if they're releasing a whole bunch closer to launch and kind of like spreading that out over time to get more people trying to buy those rubies. But right now it seems pretty solid.
It feels very weird playing a Mario Kart game with one hand. That's something I'm not used to.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the steering. However, the rest of it kind of works. It's pretty fun.
Okay. Again, that is Mario Kart Tour. You can download it for free right now. I know on iOS. Is it on Android yet? Do you know?
Yeah, this is me on Android. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm playing on Android.
Okay, so they didn't stagger like they did the Super Mario Run, where it was on iOS only at the beginning. It's nice that they have it on both now.
It is. Yeah, I wasn't aware that that I signed up for like the beta, but I never got an invite for it. And I just kind of released.
Right.
And yeah, it came out same day as iOS.
All right, Nate. Well, thank you so much for checking out these games and sharing with us. Sounds like we got some good things to look forward to.
Oh yeah, thanks, Scott.
All right, man. We'll catch you later.
We'll see ya.
Hey there, Rel. Long time no see. How you been, man?
Been pretty good. It's been all baby all day.
I imagine, man. I don't envy you in the least, but I do envy you in your chance to get a chance to play through The Walking Dead Telltale's Definitive Edition, because this is the first time you've played these games, correct?
It's the first time I've played them, but I must admit, I watched the LPs that two best friends did.
Okay.
Super best friends. And so, I have an inkling of what happens in the games.
Gotcha, but you just didn't get any hands-on with it. This is the first time, yeah?
Yeah, this is the first time where I've actually been able to shape how the games progress or how the story progresses.
I gotta admit, I'm a little jealous that you get to experience some of this story for the first time. Well, I guess it's not for the first time because you watch a Let's Play of it, but still, there's something about actually being in control and seeing what happens. So kudos to you, man. This one comes from Skybound Games, and it was provided to you by Sandbox Strategy, so shout out to those guys for hooking us up with a copy. So talk to me about it. This is the first time you actually got to control Clementine and interact with these characters. What's your initial take on how the story plays out?
Well, it's a heavy story, man.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
Yeah, like the game itself, there was actually some things I noticed playing through the game, because initially with the first Walking Dead, all of these games were pretty faithfully like transported into this definitive edition. The UI, for example, didn't really change over the last 7 years, I think it was 9 years actually. Yeah. So the first Walking Dead season looks relatively primitive compared to the final season, which looks really nice, and it's just so much more upgraded graphically. The UI is nicer. The way the game plays in the final season is much more refined than the first one. But ultimately, it was a lot of fun. And I'm actually going to be streaming these games at some point. But like my plan for the playthrough I did for the review, I played it more or less normally. What I would like to do for the stream is to play through at least the first season, not saying anything unless I have to. Just be Lee the mute.
So you're not going to talk the entire time? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. The headcanon that I have is that Lee is actually insane, and only Clementine is a real person. And so he'll talk to her, but everyone else is a figment, he thinks is a figment of his imagination, and he just won't respond to them.
Interesting. That's going to be an interesting way to go through it. I kind of want to see how that is. So the biggest question I have, though, has to come with the performance, and I really want to get your take on this. And I know it might be difficult for you to answer because you didn't actually play these, but maybe even watching the Let's Plays might be able to help you compare a little bit. One of the biggest complaints that people had with Telltale games in general is the frame rate. And sometimes, when you select a dialogue option, there's like a little bit of a stutter, and things just don't seem to run smoothly as you would like them to. Has this been corrected with the definitive edition, or is there still some lag there?
Well, I didn't really notice any lags. I didn't really notice any lag when making when making dialogue selections. But granted, I have a pretty beefy PC, so that might be part of it. But I didn't really notice anything. And I know what you're talking about, because this was something that was pointed out during the Let's Plays by Super Best Friends when they went through these games. Well, not only these, but also like the Game of Thrones ones and Borderlands and everything. So I understand what you mean, but I didn't really notice anything in this game. The only major glitch that I saw was in season 3. I clicked on like the door to an ambulance, and rather than walk over to the door, the Javi, the avatar for season 3, basically just jumped super speed from the back to the door.
Like teleported or something?
Not even teleported. It looked like he just very quickly moved. Like there was no walking animation. He just went zip, like he's Quicksilver.
That's kind of weird. I honestly don't think I remember ever experiencing that, but it's been years since I've played these games. So,
Yeah.
But overall, it sounds like the quality has improved to some degree, because you said you didn't even notice it, right?
Yeah, and also keep in mind that all of these games have been graphically updated. So, like even season 1 has had more details put into the graphics, as well as more details put into the environments. Everything looks nicer. And they have this graphic black mode that makes everything look more in line with the Walking Dead comic books.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. It basically eliminates some of the color from the game, sort of. It makes everything a little bit more, basically ups the contrast and makes everything a little bit more stark.
Okay. So are there any other added benefits to getting the definitive edition for somebody that maybe has already played these games? Is there... What's the selling point for someone that's already been through, knows the story and all that? I mean, I know these include all the seasons and all of the DLC associated with it, but what other pluses are there?
So the definitive edition also includes, besides all the games and all the DLC, that you got a music player that lets you play anything from any season, model viewer, something like 10 hours of developer videos. I didn't have time to watch them all, but they seemed pretty neat. And a few other little benefits, like, the additional lighting and the graphics and everything. But all told, if you already own all of the episodes, like on Steam, for example, or on console somewhere, I wouldn't recommend buying the definitive edition, because it's $50,
Right.
And you're essentially paying $50 to have all the games in one program with the music player, model viewer, and like better graphics, but ultimately it's still the same games.
Okay. So it sounds like you recommend it for people that haven't played it, but if you've got it, just wait for a sale, sounds like.
Absolutely. If you have not played The Walking Dead at all, first of all, what have you been doing with your life?
Right.
And second of all, absolutely get the definitive edition. This is your chance to jump into the franchise. But yeah, if you've already played all 4, or even if you've played like 3 of them and you're just waiting to get the final season, I mean, just wait for a sale, because if you played the games already, you're not getting a lot for your $50.
Gotcha. Also, you mentioned your live stream. Where can everybody follow that so they can click on that and watch you play the game, as well as your video review down the road?
So video review will be going up on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/relplays. That's RELLE plays. Twitch is the exact same, twitch.tv/relplays, same spelling. I normally stream Thursday afternoons about 3:30, 4 p.m. starting time. It's a little up in the air because I have to take care of the kid, and so basically when my wife gets home, then I can run off and stream. I'm currently finishing up Control, but I have like an hour left of that game, and then once I finish that, I'm just going to jump right into The Walking Dead.
Sounds good, man. We look forward to that, and I'm a little jealous that you're already done with Control. I've got like an hour into that game, and I can't wait to... I got to finish Zelda first.
It's so good.
I've heard everybody just keeps raving about this game, and I wasn't impressed with the first hour, so I'm just waiting to be blown away like everybody else is for sure.
Let me put it this way. Once you're actually able to traverse the ashtray maze, which is kind of late in the game, but still, you'll know what everyone's talking about.
That's what everybody keeps saying, the ashtray maze and the music. I've actually listened to the song they play during that scene, and that makes me want to get to that scene even more. So
it is the most epic action sequence ever.
Awesome. Can't wait to play it. Well, Rel, thanks so much for stopping by, man. I really do appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right, we'll catch you later.
Later.
Hey there, Thomas. Long time no see.
Hey, Scott. Yeah, you've been quite busy lately. Something with a con that was very, very successful. Congratulations on that, and for the crew.
Thank you very much. It was a lot of work, a lot of fun. Wish you could have been here, man. But next year we'll have to put it on your calendar, get you out here so you can come enjoy it with us.
I enjoyed it from a distance from all the photos that you sent me.
It was a good time. Well,
I was there in spirit.
You were here to talk to us about a DLC pack for a game that you reviewed for us quite a while ago called Mutant Year Zero. The DLC is called Seed of Evil. For those that don't remember, this game comes from the Bearded Ladies. That's the name of the developer. Also Funcom, and we got to give a shout out to Evolve PR, who hooked you up with the review copy of this one so that you can help review this for us. So real quick, before we get into the DLC, can you remind everybody exactly what Mutant Year Zero is? Because I know it's on Game Pass on Xbox over here and PC, and you're playing on PC, but what exactly is this game?
This game is a tactical, story-driven RPG based on the 35-year-old tabletop role-playing game called Mutant Year Zero, in which you play a mutant. So like basically an anthropomorphized duck or boar or whatever. And in this game, it takes place in post-apocalyptic Sweden, and you are mutant stalkers. And a stalker is like a ranger or a hunter. They defend the Ark, and they go out into the wasteland to find scrap and weapons and take care of the ghouls who come too close. And in the base game is called Road to Eden. And as I said, it is very heavily story-driven. So you go on missions because you want to find out how you came about. What is your own story? You don't know much other than that the elder of the Ark raised you, and you try to find out what's going on and follow his instructions in keeping the Ark safe. And you go into areas, and then the moment you come near either spotted by an enemy or you want to ambush an enemy, then you go into tactical mode, and that means that from that point on it's turn-based. But you can, for instance, before you go there, as I said, you can ambush the enemy, so you can sneak about and put your 3 guys where you want them, and then if you play it right, for instance, and you use your silent weapons very well, then you can take out enemies before they can alarm anyone, and that way you can lower the amount of enemies you have to fight.
Now, this gameplay is, if I remember correctly, harkens very much to XCOM, which I know is a title people are familiar with. Is that a good comparison?
That is a good comparison, yeah.
Okay. So talk to me about Seed of Evil, because you said this is very story-based. What's the story in this DLC?
The story in this DLC is that it continues the story from where Road to Eden left off. As in, I started the game up and I literally continued from where I left off when I finished the last game.
Okay.
And in this case, you're being called back to the Ark, and you notice there are all these weird red vines everywhere, and people are acting strange, and the ghouls, the enemies, are acting strange, and they seem to be even more dangerous than normal. And there is something going on, and you are being sent out. You are sent out to find out what is going on, and once you found out what is going on, you're being sent out to eliminate the threat. And in this case, it is basically like 5 or 6 new areas to explore, new enemies to fight, new weapons to find, more scrap to gather. But it is also includes several side missions. So most of the time, once you discover a new area, you get a sort of phone call from the Ark saying, hey, we have spotted a large amount of enemies in that area. And then usually I just went there first, took care of that threat. So you go to an area that you've already been. There are new enemies there that you can take out, new rewards. So in that way, it is quite an extensive DLC. It took me about 19 hours to finish.
Okay.
So it was not easy, and I played it on story mode. So it was that's the easiest setting. And I enjoyed it immensely. It is basically a continuation of the story. It is more of the same, and that's great because the original game was one of my favorite games of 2018. So I was very happy to jump back in with my favorite mutants and see what else this destroyed version of Sweden had going for me.
Okay. Now you mentioned that this picks up right where the story ends on Road to Eden, which is the original vanilla game. Would it behoove somebody to jump right into Seed of Evil, or would you need to play the main game first?
You would need to play the main game first.
Okay.
Because you're not strong enough to take on the threat of the Seed of Evil.
Gotcha.
And I can say that even in story mode, especially the final battle was took me quite a while to conquer them.
Okay. Again, that is Mutant Year Zero, the DLC pack called Seed of Evil. That is available on PC and Xbox One. I believe those are the only platforms it's available. Am I correct? Do you remember?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Well, I want to talk about one other game that you've been playing before we let you go. And as always, you are our point-and-click guy. And you played a game called Whispers of a Machine from Faravid Interactive and Clifftop Games. I watched a trailer for this, and I got to say, I'm not a massive point-and-click adventure game guy like you are. This one might have intrigued me more than any other that you've talked about in the past. The art style I got to talk about first looks amazing. It's very pixelated, but it looks like some of the most detailed pixel art that I've seen in a point-and-click adventure. Does that carry out throughout the whole game?
Yeah. It's gorgeous pixel art. It plays really well, and in this game, it is also takes place in a post-apocalyptic Scandinavian country. So that seems to be a very popular place to set adventure games or story-driven games nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, you play a sort of a police detective who is sent out to a mining village, and you have to investigate a murder. And this is a village where no murders have occurred in God knows how long. So this is quite something happening there.
Mm-hmm.
And while you investigate this crime, you obviously uncover more sinister going-ons in this what at first glance was a very quiet village. This is a more of a cyberpunk post-apocalyptic style adventure.
Mm-hmm.
The collapse of society is blamed on artificial intelligence. So in this world, computers and stuff is forbidden.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so they do have technology, but it's more like electricity and stuff like that. They do not allow computers or anything to work, but the main character is an augmented human. So she has some cybernetic implants.
Yeah, I saw that she was able to walk around invisible in one scene, it looked like.
Well, the cool thing is, this character is the choices you make in the game influence what direction your character grows into, and there are three directions like empathetic, analytical, and damn it, the third one just slipped my mind for a second. And the way you answer, the way you react to people, the way you go about your investigation influences which direction you grow into. And that influences what kind of new abilities you gain during the game. So, for instance, I played the game very empathetically, which is quite normal for me. So I got a certain, and I won't spoil it what it was, but I got different abilities than someone who would play it from an analytical point of view, which means that there are, well, three ways of playing the game. You can, and that also influences the way you solve certain situations and the way you interact with good guys and bad guys in the game.
So
that's
that'll give
really,
you some
really interesting.
replayability then? You can go through and play it a different way if you want to?
Yes, in theory, you should be able to play it very differently and be able to solve problems very differently because you don't get the same abilities.
Right.
And a couple of things are available to that you start the game with, so they are available to everyone. That's how you investigate crime scenes. You can, for instance, you have a device that can listen to that you can turn on when you're talking to someone, and if that person is lying, an anomaly will see in the pattern, and you can use that to pressure for someone. Says, "Hey, God, dude, I know you're lying about this, so better tell me the truth."
Right.
And you have you have a device. I think it's in your eye where you can scan the a crime scene or any scene actually, and search for clues. And if you, for instance, have the boot print of someone, you
Mhm.
can search the floor and see if that person walked there. See if there's
Gotcha.
impression left of the boot print, and that's also something that you use to to solve the problems you encounter. And the problems you encounter are all based in the story, so they're all. It's not like, oh, now I have to for some reason in the middle of nowhere solve a logic puzzle just to
Gotcha.
make the game longer. All the puzzles that are in there are solvable. That you have all the clues, and you just need to pay attention and sometimes combine the right objects to continue. But everything makes sense. You can die, but if you die, you just start seconds before you died, and you can try again.
Gotcha.
So
Now,
it's not like you have to start all over. You
n-
can't really save the game. You can only save the game when you quit the game. The game saves itself. So it's not like you can say, oh, I'm going to try this and then I'm going to load it and I'm going to try it in a different way. No, your choices are permanent. So you continue on the road that you set it.
I do like that. And I feel like point and click adventures kind of hang their hat on the story. That's like a big part of it. So
That's
you have
90% of it.
right. You finished this game, correct?
Yeah,
Is the story wrap up in a satisfying way with some fun surprises?
absolutely.
Awesome.
I was playing, and a friend of mine was also playing it, and we were discussing it. And I was a bit further than he was. I was saying like, oh, I actually thought that guy did it, and he said, well, I actually thought that she did it, and turns out we were both incorrect. So that was it's not a super long game. It took me, as an experienced adventure gamer, it took me about between 6 and 7 hours to finish.
Okay.
But it's a really good story, and it, as you said, it looks beautiful. The voice acting is great. It's a very well crafted game.
Awesome. So it sounds like you recommend it.
Absolutely recommend it. Yeah.
All right. Again, that is Whispers of a Machine from Faravid Interactive and Clifftop Games. Thomas, thank you so much for stopping and talking about these two games. Really appreciate it. And it's always a pleasure to chat with you, man.
Yeah, you're very welcome, and good luck with all you're doing. And please take some rest, Scott. You look tired.
I will definitely do my best, man. But I appreciate you being here, man. And Sláinte.
Sláinte.
All right. Catch you later, man.
Bye.
Thanks once again to Bob, Nate, Rel, and Thomas for those reviews. Really do appreciate it. As far as games that we've been catching up on, I have been picking away at Link's Awakening Remastered. I cannot stop playing it. I am just overjoyed at how perfect this remaster is. It's everything I wanted in a remake of Link's Awakening and more. It's gorgeous. They've fixed the control scheme in a way that makes the game easier. I mean, you have a dedicated button for your sword, dedicated button for your shield, dedicated button for your boots, the boost. Whereas before, you always had to swap all that out on your main menu because you can only have two things at once. It makes the game run so much more fluid, and I love it. I am currently on the bird dungeon, which, if you guys have played the game, that's the one where you have the pillars that you have to knock down with a metal ball inside that to bring down the tower, to bring the top level down to your level. That one is giving me some struggles there. But it is a fantastic game, and I am loving it. What about you guys? Anything else you've been catching up on?
I've been diving back into the Wasteland again with Fallout 76.
Still playing that game, huh?
Yep, still going.
All right.
Somebody had to.
I keep hearing people playing that game. They're loving it, so. But I think that is finally going to do it for this episode of The Gaming Outsider. Zach, any parting words or recommendations for the listeners?
Well, of course, comic recommendation. Pick up House of X Powers of 10. It's Marvel's doing some pretty crazy things with the X-Men right now.
All right.
Now they finally can care about them again.
Sounds good. CB, what about you?
I actually just finished an Audible book yesterday called Thank Me for My Service by Matt Best. He's a YouTube veteran personality. He's a little ridiculous and over the top. For a memoir book, it's kind of ridiculous. So it's got some funny moments.
All right. Well, thanks for that. And I mentioned it last week, but the episode will be live now that you are hearing this episode. I have our interview with Kenny Clark from the Green Bay Packers on my other podcast, Packers Fan Podcast, that you can listen to at the same place you listen to this one. So be sure to check that out if you are a Packers fan. I would appreciate it. But thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please be sure to email us if you have any questions or concerns. Our address is feedback@thegamingoutsider.com. Until next week, I'm Scott Clark with Zach Parkerson and Chris Behrensmeyer, and we are The Gaming Outsider. And remember, there's no such thing as a bad game, just games that aren't for you.